Hello, this is Harwin from SeoWolf Podcast. Today's topic is how to handle escalation calls. Escalation call is something like if you're taking a call, if you or someone with your colleague is taking a call, and the customer says he's not happy with the service or he's not able to get a resolution from speaking to that person, and he asked to speak to a senior or a manager who is there in the call center. So it's a little different. We're not talking about the retail environment right now. I'll be talking about what happens in a call center environment or during a phone calls. The concepts are pretty much the same that will be there in a retail environment, but here will be, because in a telephone call, there can be a senior, an agent just like you, so you don't have to be a manager to take an escalation calls. So here it goes. First of all, there's no need to panic just because the customer is angry at that agent. Well, even though he is angry, but when he'll be speaking to a escalation person or a senior, he might have forgotten a lot of things that were tied to that person. He will usually come with it with a hope and a new perspective. And this might sound different because a lot of times when you'll be taking calls, the customer would be very angry. But you have to keep it as an open slate. You should not think that just because that person was rude to that agent or that person was taking the call doesn't mean that it will be same to for you. So you have to not bother about that much. And second, before you take the call, try to take it as quickly as possible. A lot of people wait a while. They think that maybe they should call after 1 hour or 15 minutes, 20 minutes later, or after talking a lot about that. But the best way to handle it is as soon as the person says that he's not able to take the call, escalation calls or something, you can take it directly. Don't waste so much time within. It should be done. It should not take more than 4 minutes. When I say 4 minutes, that includes even if you are personally on a call, you should be able to transfer that call to yourself within 4 minutes. So that is the time. That's the maximum time I think that is within which you should take the call. Because more than that, I think it shows kind of a disrespect for the customer that is there. And even if you are busy with something, at least you should speak to the customer and say like, yes, I am. Maybe you could say I'm a bit tied up with something, sir. I'll definitely just give you a call back. Maybe I'm right now in a meeting. Even if you're in a meeting, you could say that just for 5 or 10 seconds, you could address the customer concern, and you could say maybe that I recognize that is there, and take the call anyway. And second thing, you should either hear the call or sometimes it's not possible to take out the call recordings and hear the call just as it is. But if you can, you should. Otherwise, maybe you should get a whole perspective of what happened during the call with the agent that took the call and find out what exactly his concerns are beforehand, and then go to that. And in the future, right now, in the future, in the podcast, in a while, I'll be telling you the two styles of handling an escalation call. But for both of them, this is very important. You should have a thorough knowledge of what went on the call, what is the customer angry about, so you can directly address those issues. Third, it should, what you don't need to give directly a solution for every wrong thing has happened for that customer. Obviously, you cannot repair everything, or some things will be beyond your control. It will take help with different departments, and sometimes there are things that you just cannot fix. It's like if they want something to be given to them right now within 1 hour, but you know that that process, even if how fast you expedite it, will take 2 or 3 days. Sometimes it is not possible. So you should not be afraid, or you should not give up on that time, and not fear that also. Say the truth, no matter what, and attend that call anyway. Do not fear the call, and directly speak to the customers anyway. Now, I think third, whenever you're on the call, be respectful. For the first part, do not take it, even if the customer is disrespectful, or just saying all sort of things, whatever. First thing first, you have to be respectful, and you have to be courteous to the way, because that is how you set the precedent for the future interaction. You have to go on with such high respect that he thinks that he's looking like an idiot talking so disrespectfully, or having that. So even you can allow him to vent, allow him to go, but at the start of the interaction, you should let hear him very carefully. And even if you've heard the call, and if you have heard the concern or whatever, if he starts to speak about the concern, let him go through. And irrespective of whatever is your style, which I will be sharing in the future, you have to first, if the customer is venting, let him vent. If the customer has, even if you know the issue, you've heard it 20 times, you've heard the same kind of issue 20 times, you know this goes on all the time and all on, you have to let the customer vent about his issue. That is very important, and do not disturb him or interrupt in between. Let him go through, let him say everything, and if possible, write all those issues down if you don't remember. Like one things, maybe this agent was disrespectful, he did not answer this, I had my package, or this not delivered on time, this happened, that happened, they did not receive your email on time, they did not reply to the email on time, and all those kind of shit. Even if it is there, do not interrupt and say that okay, this is the reason for that, this is the reason for that. A lot of people, they think that agents or someone who's handling the call, they think that some customer is saying I have to giving a complaint, and I have to reply back to that at the same time. But that should not be the case. You should listen first, let him state all the things that are wrong, or whatever things that are bad that have his experience, what he has experienced. Do not interrupt them. Let him go through. Let him or her go through all the things. Listen carefully. You can write them down if you think that you need to speak at that moment. You have to patiently let it pass, and maybe write it down, and let him finish the whole sentence. Do not interrupt them, or anyway barge in between. Let that whole flow of the thought, let them go through that. After that, once it goes through, you don't have to go start, okay, this was the wrong thing that happened, this is the right thing we'll do. You have to say, yes, I'll listen to this, I've listened to you, you acknowledge whatever happened. If there's need, you apologize. Even if it's not like some things are beyond your control, some things you have not done, but as you can apologize on behalf of the company or whatever happened, that this is the thing that has happened, and apologize for the situation that is therein. And what he doesn't, he does want a solution. A lot of times they do want a solution, but even if you don't have a solution at that time, you can always tell them that you will take responsibility for this, you will take accountability for what happened. And even if you don't have all the information right there, you can ask for the customer, give me 5 minutes, give me 1 hour, I will make sure, I'll go through the issue and find out what happened. Just please sir, give me 5 minutes or 1 minute, I'll take charge of the situation, and I will get back to you. And a lot of times it works perfectly fine, and you can do the same thing that the agent would have done when he was on the call. just by doing that. Or maybe you can even tell them to do the same thing, whatever the process you follow. Sometimes what happens is they'll be following the same process regardless of its escalation or non-escalation call, but sometimes the customers are angry and they want to speak to a senior or a manager regarding this. But if you do that, you can get the same thing done, and maybe you can go speak to the person who's maybe if it is something you're on a restaurant and you're just suppose you are taking an escalation for a waiter whose food has not come yet, and you're the supervisor for that shift for that time, and you could say you will take care of this, give me some time, give me 5 minutes of time, I'll just uh, find out what happened and I'll get back to you. You could go to the same thing for the chef and address the issue, please expedite it. The waiter might have done the same thing, but this time you took responsibility, you listened to their concern, and you listened to them carefully and gave them a solution. And after 5 minutes, after speaking to that maybe the cook or chef or whatever, or the person who will take care of this thing that might expedite their case or problem, you can get back to them that yes sir, I've taken care of the solution. And you don't even have to do something out of the box or something that you wouldn't do for a normal customer anyways. A lot of people have the misconception that if you're a manager or if you're a supervisor and if you get an escalation, you have to uh, do something, you have to go all the way beyond and do something that you wouldn't normally do for a normal customer, and you have to, maybe you have to spend a lot of money, maybe like waive some things off, or some maybe give them money, money in the sense like make the thing free or this kind of stuff. But a lot of times you don't have to do that, and it can also lead to some people getting angry, because a lot of times when people are angry and let's say you're at a restaurant, I'm giving an example of a restaurant because it's a very common service example, and a lot of people can relate to it, but it can be anything. It can be maybe if you're a company manufacturing or something, and from customer service you get a query that this package is this parcel or this commodity that you received is defective or something like that. Oftentimes that customer has enough money to, like, he doesn't want it to be free, that not going to be something that will solve his issue, and the same thing goes for a lot of restaurants. If it's something maybe if they've ordered uh, let's say pasta something and it's not up to mark or something that is there, they can of course afford another pasta or any piece of dish, just because you give it to them for free or you give a replacement or something does not directly solve an issue. And a lot of times if it's a business to business something, a small parcel or something is not going to solve their issue or solve their anger what is going on. So this is a misconception that if it's a customer service or something, is that you just pay money, spend money, and waive off the fees or waive off the money that will solve the issue. That is not a good way to negotiate. Of course, some cases it might be necessary, or you could use it as a way when you are running out of time or some situation that might demand it. But a lot of times you can get away with it, and this is also something that it is something that managers can do, or maybe if you are at a position of doing it, or if you've been given the authority to do that, yes, or you are the owner, you can do that. But a lot of times you cannot do it, because maybe if you are in a call center and you are taking a senior call as a supervisor or a team leader or something, sometimes you won't have the authority to waive something off, and You might directly taking this something. Sometimes some things cannot be refundable, because if they wasted their time, you cannot refund them their time back, right? So that is the issue. This It's kind of like a crutch. Don't use money as a crutch for handling customer complaints. Just because everyone else does it does not mean this is the right thing. There are certain kind of situations where it is appropriate, but a lot of times, if you are a good negotiator, if you are a uh, good person in the sense, good uh, at taking the escalation calls, you can get away without the money, and giving them the money, and giving and handling the escalation call in the situation and making it better without doing all this, because a lot of times they just want to be heard. And this is an important issue. They wanted to be treated with respect when these things are not going around their way, and they have kind of lost hope in that person when they're taking, and they are uh, thinking about maybe this person, maybe personally he doesn't want to help me, but I relied on the company. The company should be helping me with something, so that is the reason why it's kind of like yeah, they ask for help. When they ask for a manager, senior, it's not that they have not given up on the company. They are just thinking that maybe if they speak to someone else at the department who knows what he's doing, his situation will be resolved, and a lot of time it does get resolved, and that is the reason why people do it. Because a lot of times when companies hire the people who are taking calls, they are young guys, freshers, graduates who have just started in the process, and sometimes they're not trained so well, or sometimes they're just new at the job, and it's sometimes not even their fault. They've not been trained well, but they should. It's not, they're not even experienced enough sometimes to handle this, and that is okay. They do and will learn from experience, but this happens, believe it or not. Sometimes you do have to ask to speak to a senior, and it's not bad to ask to them. And I'm also telling you about handling this situation. It does not have to be that difficult. Other part is now the future. Other I was talking about is not exactly the future, but okay. So there are two ways to handle an escalation call, and this depends on the style. So first one is you have to that is the most common use is you acknowledge whatever bad things that have happened. So I told about you have to hear whatever has happened during that call. So you hear whatever has happened during the call, and you start off with acknowledging that yes, this was bad, so this is happening, I know the situation, and you comment on whatever situation has happened. This is basically becoming an authority on where they are. So you tell them that this is the situation, I know your package has been delayed, your food is bad, I have understood that this is there. You acknowledge everything first, that this is the case, okay, yes, I understood the situation, and this is how it will go through, and that's all. We'll find it out about, we will be fixing this, we'll be providing a resolution, and within 24 hours or something, or within 10 minutes, it will be a situation. We will take care of whatever the bad thing has happened. Maybe the previous employee that you had spoken to the customer was rude, or maybe they had faced some kind of a product that was malfunctioning. So maybe you could address that also, that we will take care that appropriate action does get taken for the employee that was there, and for the product we will make sure this is replaced, or we'll take the feedback regarding this to the quality team and make sure this does not happen again, and all whatever this is there. So you start off with that, with a reassurance, and become an authority on where they are, and further you can ask them, yes, anything else, what are the situations, and go through that. And it works perfectly well, and this is also there. And this honestly, for me, it did not work well with my style there, but I do acknowledge it as this is one of the good ways when you're starting out. This is a good way to start. And the second way, uh, which is there to handle an escalation call, is without that, you can also directly go in like a normal call, how you would handle the normal situation, and just go in directly and ask the customer what the issue is directly, like yes, so how can I help you? Directly you can start. This is helpful when you do not have a lot of time to find out from the previous employee what was the situation that had caused distress that had happened, and you directly have to speak to the customer anyway, or maybe there was some fight within that agent or that person and between the customer, and you're not able to understand who was right or who was wrong along that way, so you have to directly speak to the customer anyway. So this is for those situations. You can directly go in, yes, so what is the issue, what can I help you with, what is the information I can help you with, what is the reason, whatever, you can find out directly, and the customer can start and explain the situation on his own. And this also, this in this approach, you let the customer go through and explain the problem again, and you let them vent again whatever situation has happened, and you listen. This time you address it properly, you listen to all the things that had happened, you give appropriate responses, and you handle all the how a good customer service in the first place, that agent that should have handled the call or the situation itself, you handle it like that. So you come off as a kind of like the same how fresh how a person should have dealt with in the first place. You handle it directly like that, so you're just kind of a different person, and you remove all the bad anchors that had happened before along the way. You can not repeat what had happened before, and if you this kind of takes experience to handle, because you should know also that what is the bad things that usually other agents are doing, or what is the bad experiences that the customer has faced. So when it takes time, and when you've been a long time and you know the kind of problems that are already happening, you can use this approach, and this will save you time from asking what happened during the call from the other person, because maybe that person has to maybe do a different job or handling a different customer after that, and you don't have all that time to listen to the whole the situation happens, and maybe that person does not give you all the details, and you might come to the call with the bias that this is the wrong thing that might have happened, or maybe that the person who handled the call with the agent customer is in a bad mood and is not in a mood or state of mind to explain to you what exactly happened. So this also happens a lot of times. So for this case, those kind of scenarios, this is a better way. You can directly go in fresh and handle this, and you should not be afraid of escalations calls, and because people can sense fear when you're doing it. So you should be having kind of a responsibility and take the accountability of what happened during their experience, and you don't also have to give them all the answers at once. They don't expect, because they know that people who are maybe the superior or supervisor or manager or whatever, maybe you might be taking it as a supervisor, or you might be just handling those 12 people of team in the call center during that time when the team leader is away, or those kind of things. But they are certain kind, the customer do recognize that you might not be an expert in that field, but you might have been chosen for that role based on your leadership skills or experience in other areas or something. So they recognize that you might not have all the technical answers at that time, but that does not mean that you cannot give them. You can give them, take some time and get the answers what they want and get them the resolution of what they require. Maybe it's something that if they need some kind of document from a service team or from a different kind of team, you can arrange for that. If they need some technical help of what is wrong with their, maybe their PC or what the website, something has gone wrong, they understand that you might not have the technical knowledge, or maybe there's certain things that you're not sure about, that you need to consult something. You can be honest with them and go through. You do not have to lie, you do not have to pretend this is there. If you don't know something, be honest. And someone who is angry, they will respect the honesty. If you do not know about something, if you do not have some knowledge on something, instead of lying or making up false promises, it is better that you speak the truth about the situation, that what has happened. This can oftentimes be interrupted the pattern of what usually how the situations are handled by when they're by the manager or the supervisor when it is wrong. And that's all. And do not fear it. It's just like any other thing that happens, and you do not need to become a manager to handle those kind of escalation call or manager calls. These are just a normal kind of calls. So that's all for now. Even if you're a manager or someone who is a team leader hearing this is the same. You might not, if you're someone who has not experienced handling these calls, you can use this as a guide map of how you can handle this in the future. And that's all. If you have any questions, you can post or ask them before. That's all for now. Thank you for listening to the SeoWolf Podcast. This is Harwin signing out.